So you're looking to build a powerful deck that might not have as powerful a grip on your wallet. I've got 5 absolute powerhouses for you, all of them coming in at under $50. We've got the entire decks built for all of these, and this is going to get pretty in-depth, so buckle up. Timestamps are down below if you want to skip to a specific deck. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment. Now let's get into it. The first deck comes in at $44.25, and the commander is Sithis the Harvest Hand. For 1 green and 1 white, we get a 1/2. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you gain 1 life and you draw a card. Sithis is a multicolored enchantress in the command zone, and that's really strong. This deck uses her cheap CMC and powerful card draw ability to spam the board with enchantment auras to either buff her or other powerful targets, trigger her draw ability to allow us to dig into some really cool win cons. So let's talk about the main enchantments we're going to be casting in this deck, which are going to be auras, and jump into the creature auras that are going to help us buff up some of our targets we'll talk about later. All That Glitters gives a +1/+1 for each artifact or enchantment in play. Ancestral Mask does the same, except for 2 and a green gives +2/+2 for each enchantment in play. Armadillo Cloak provides a +2/+2 trample and lifelink. Ethereal Armor provides a 1/1 for each enchantment we control and first strike. Feather of Flight provides a 1/0 flying and a card draw on cast. Lion Umbra provides a +3/+3 vigilance, reach, and Umbra armor for 2 green. Nyxborn Hydra, besides just being a classic X and a green Hydra with reach and trample, can also be bestowed for X and a green to provide that many +1/+1s. Rancor is a classic one, and with all of the enchantresses we run, being able to return enchantments to our hand from grave and recast them is going to provide tons of card draw in this deck, as well as giving a +2/+0 and trample for 1. Always a good one to throw in. Whip Silk, while not being the strongest ability, only providing reach for 1 green, can be returned to your hand for 1 green, which means you can cast it again to trigger all your enchantresses. Very good in this deck. Past that, we've got some auras that act as removal, like Darksteel Mutation, turning the creature into a 0/1 with Indestructible. Ossification being an aura that can exile a planeswalker or creature. Lignify being a 1 and a green enchantment that can turn a creature into a 0/4 and cause it to lose all abilities. And Trickster Elk being a creature, but you can also bestow it to make a creature lose all its abilities and become a 3/3 elk. All of those provide super solid removal in the deck, and yeah. And when you need to run removal in pretty much every deck, these are extra good in an enchantment list. And finally, for our auras, we've got some that will enchant lands to help us mana ramp. We've got Fertile Ground, which will make enchant land tap for an additional land for 1 and a green. We've got Wild Growth, which will make a land tap for an additional green. And we've got Overgrowth, which will cause a land to be tapped for an additional 2 green. Again, one of the basics the deck needs, mana ramp. Good to fill it in, being an enchantment in this list. So after talking about the auras, let's talk about our targets in the deck. Other than our commander, we have some other creatures that are really good to throw enchantments on. Archon of Sun's Grace is a 3/4 flying lifelink, so with those stats alone, throwing a ton of enchantments on this is going to be good, but it also makes us a 2/2 Pegasus whenever we cast an enchantment. Danitha Capetian Paragon is 2 and a white for a 2/2, and again, a stat checking machine with first strike, vigilance, lifelink, and it makes our auras and equipments cost 1 less, so throwing a bunch of stuff on her makes her very scary. Danitha's other version, New Benalia's Light, is equally as scary, being a 3-drop 2/2 vigilance, trample, lifelink, letting us cast auras and equipments from our graveyard once a turn. That's super strong in here. Kami of Transience is a bear, being a 1 and a green 2/2 with trample, but whenever we cast an enchantment, it gets a 1/1, and at the beginning of our end step, if an enchantment was put into our graveyard, you can return Kami to our hand, so you can throw all your enchantments on Kami. If someone gets rid of her, she just returns herself because all those enchantments fall off and go to grave. Lightpaw is as great as she's an aura tutor, because whenever you play an aura, you get to search for another one with cheaper mana cost and put it onto Lightpaws. So she'll just inevitably become a giant fox. So that's cool. I love Sun Titan in here. I know I say that a lot, but being a 6-drop 6/6 vigilance is already pretty good stats to just throw a ton of auras on. But most of our auras can be grabbed with Sun Titan's attack trigger, meaning that it can get a huge buff from that aura before damage is dealt, which is just a nice interaction. I like that. And finally, for our aura targets, we've got Timber Paladin, which is actually a card I didn't know existed. Being 1 and a green for a 1/1, as long as it is enchanted by exactly 1 aura, it has base power and toughness of 3/3. As long as it's enchanted by exactly 2 auras, it's a 5/5 vigilance. And as long as it's enchanted by 3, it has base power and toughness 10/10, vigilance, and trample. Yeah, this is definitely in the win con slot as well in this deck, but one of the best targets to throw all your stuff on. Not to even mention this deck's draw engines are incredibly potent. All of the draw in this deck is on an engine that can just output an insane amount. We've got all the cheap enchantresses, Eidolon Blossoms, Enchantress's Presence, Core Spirit Dancer, Mesa Enchantress, Satyr Enchanter, Citizen Champion, SRAM Senior Artificer, Tanglespan Lookout, and Verdant Enchantress, all providing card draw on either enchantment or aura, which is insane in this deck. Not to even mention Elevere, who provides card draw when enchanted creatures deals deal damage, or Kutzel, who provides card draw whenever something with greater power than its base power deals damage. Both easily achievable in this deck. Of course, we've got all of the budget enchantment tutors. We've got Heliod's Pilgrim, Idyllic Tutor, Moonblessed Cleric, Open the Armory, and Plea for Guidance, all giving this deck a potent tutor kit that can pretty much get you out of any situation you need out of. We've also got Umbra Mystic. If I'm being honest, I didn't know where to put this in the list. It's protection because all your auras gain totem armor. So if that creature dies, you just remove all damage and destroy the aura instead. Really good. Didn't really have a place to go in the actual layout of the video. So the deck's game plan, past just playing all of these stat checking creatures and then throwing enchantments on them, drawing a ton of cards. We've got Psychosis Crawler because of the amount of card draw this deck is going to output. Making opponents lose a life whenever we draw a card is actually going to be pretty significant. Resurgent Belief is also another fantastic win con in this deck, being a 1 and a white suspend 2 card that returns all enchantments from your graveyard to the battlefield. And having that many enchantments hit play with all the triggers we have, all the auras hit play, enchanting a bunch of different stuff, that seems like a pretty good way to win a game. And then of course we got Sigil of the Empty Throne, providing 4/4 angels whenever we play an enchantment. So again, 4/4 angels are going to be great to throw more auras on, and just flooding the board with them by itself going to win you a game. Past all that, here's the deck's ramp. Here's the deck's removal, and here's the deck's board interaction, as well as the deck's mana base. If you want to get a full look at any of the deck lists we talk about today, there's links to all 5 of them down below, and with that, we'll move on to deck number 2. Deck number 2 comes in at $47.14 and is built around Xenagos, God of Revels, who is 3, a green, and a red for a 6/5 indestructible. As long as your devotion to red and green is less than 7, Xenagos isn't a creature. At the beginning of combat on your turn, another target creature you control gains haste and gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is that creature's power. Xenagos provides a powerfully large buff, but what we really care about is getting some of those attack triggers that we normally wouldn't get by giving our creatures haste with his ability as well. Running plenty of mana ramp and giant creatures to bash opponents' faces in, like Gruul is known to do. So one of the main points of this deck is it runs a lot of mana ramp. We run 14 pieces of mana ramp. Here's a look at those. To 1, get out Xenagos, and 2, rush out some of our big boys. Our big boys include Endray's Forerunner, being an 8-drop 7/7 Vigilance Trample Haste that gives your whole board +2/+2 Vigilance and Trample until end of turn. Not bad, you know, making him a 14/14 Vigilance Trample Haste with Xenagos alone. Not bad, giving your whole board a +2/+2 Vigilance Trample buff. Pretty good. Adding 3 Devotion with Xenagos in play, 2 Swing with Xenagos as well. Also not bad. Atali Primal Storm is insane in this deck, being 4 and 2 red for a 6/6 that when it attacks, each player exiles their top card, and you may cast any number of them for free. Which, when you have Xenagos in play, Atali is now 6 for a 12/12 haste that can do that the turn it comes out. Sure. Ghalta being a 12/12 trample that costs X less, where X is the total power, in this deck means Ghalta is pretty much going to come out for 2 green, being a 24/24 trample with Xenagos. It's not bad. Giant Ediphage being 5 and 2 green for a 7/7 trample that makes token copies of itself is now a 14/14 trample haste, and you're going to have more of them. Inferno Titan, old school classic, being 4 and 2 red for a 6/6 that has the fire breathing mechanic on it, and also when it attacks or enters, deals 3 damage divided amongst 3 targets, which now when it's a 12/12 haste means you'll not only have a 12/12 haste that you can buff, you'll also be dealing 6 damage divided the turn it comes out. Pyrewood Gearhulk is a brand new one from Aetherdrift, being 2 red and 2 green for a 7/7 Vigilance Menace. When it enters, other creatures you control get +2/+2, gain Vigilance, and Menace, and damage can't be prevented. Again, this is now a 14/14 Vigilance, Menace, Haste. Gives your whole board 2/2 Vigilance, Menace. Yeah, you're going to end games with that. And then finally for our big boys, we've got Savage Ventmaw, being 4, a green, and a red for a 4/4 flying. When it attacks, you add 3 red, 3 green to your mana pool until end of turn, and you don't lose that mana as steps and phases end. So essentially, you're getting a 6-drop 8/8 flying haste that'll replace itself in mana. Which, yeah, when you're playing a bunch of big boys, sure, I'll play a Savage Ventmaw swing and then play an Inferno Titan. That seems pretty good. Now, with all these big boys, we're going to need some ways to cheat those big boys into play. So as far as the cards that can cheat big boys into play, we've got Elvish Piper, being 3 and a green for a 1/1 that you can tap 1 green and tap to put a creature card from your hand directly into play. Earg the Raised Boar is 3 and 2 red for a 6/6 with trample, with whenever Earg the Raised Boar attacks, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped and attacking, and then return it to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. If it dies or is put into exile from the battlefield, you may put it into its owner's library, third from the top. So a 5-drop 6/6 trample with an attack trigger. Yeah, I think Xenagos could make that a 12/12 haste trample that cheats other big stuff into play. It seems pretty good. Kona Rescue Beastie is 3 and a green for a 4/3. At the beginning of your second main phase, if Kona is tapped, you may put a permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield, which when our commander can make it an 8/7, it's pretty good. With haste, it's pretty easy to attack and then cheat something in on your second main. Monstrous Vortex is a good way to give all of our creature spells that cost 5 or greater Discover X, where X is that mana value, so you get to cast stuff with equal or lesser mana value, so 5 drops can cheat in other 5 drops. See the Unwritten is 4 and 2 green for a sorcery. With reveal the top 8 cards of your library, you may put a creature card from among them onto the battlefield, put the rest into your graveyard. If you control a creature with power 4 or greater, you may put 2 creature cards into play instead. Which, the Ferocious, very easy to turn on, and then you get to cheat 2 things into play. And then finally, we've got the classic Sneak Attack for 3 and a red. It's an enchantment with pay 1 red. You may put a creature card from your hand into play. It gains haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So with all these big boy creatures getting cheated into play, we've got some ways to buff them up or sneak in some huge damage in the deck. So cards like Bulk Up for 1 and a red at instant speed doubles the power of target creature until end of turn, which when paired up with Xenagos can hit someone for an insane amount of damage. Full Throttle is 4 and 2 red and gives you 2 extra combat phases for anything that attacked this turn. Mage Slayer is an equipment costing 1 red and a green for an equipment cost of 3, and whenever equipped creature attacks, it deals damage equal to its power to the player or planeswalker it's attacking. So again, with Xenagos, gross. Port Razor gives us another combat step if it deals combat damage to a separate opponent. Soul's Fire is 2 and a red at instant speed to deal target creature's power to any target. So again, with Xenagos, kind of an easy way to just take out any threat in play, as well as take out a player. As well as the classic Timir Battle Rage for 1 and a red, giving a creature double strike and trample if its power is 4 or greater, which is nuts in here. The deck also runs Combat Celebrant, being 2 and a red for a 4/1 that has, if Combat Celebrant hasn't been exerted this turn, you may exert it as it attacks. When you do untap all other creatures, there's an additional combat phase. It also runs Hellkite Charger, being a 6-drop dragon that provides extra combat phases. It runs Relentless Assault, being a sorcery that provides an additional combat, as well as 2 other cards that are really good at bringing home games in this deck. One of them being Sarkhan's Unsealing for 3 and a red at enchantment speed. Whenever you cast a creature spell with power 4, 5, or 6, it deals 4 damage to any target, and whenever you cast a creature spell with power 7 or greater, it deals 4 damage to each opponent, each creature, and each planeswalker they control, which in this deck will fire off all of the time. Absolutely ending games, along with Warstorm Surge, which deals out damage on ETB for creatures equal to that creature's power. Here's a look at the mana ramp, the card draw, and the removal, as well as the board interaction, and a look at the full land package of the deck. Again, if you want to get a full look at any of these deck lists, click on the link down below. And with that, we'll move on to deck number 3. Our third deck for the day comes in at $49.96, and the commander is the Scarab God. The Scarab God is 3 a blue and a black for a 5/5. At the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses X life, and you scry X life, where X is the number of zombies you control. You can pay 2 a black and a blue to exile target creature card from a graveyard, create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a 4/4 black zombie. And when it dies, you can return it to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. Now, a lot of people read the first line and assume you just go full zombies. No, this is a reanimator deck through and through, as the 2 a black and a blue returns the thing as a zombie, which will in and of itself fuel the Scarab God's ability. Running plenty of ways to fill the graveyard, big scary Dimir creatures to cheat out of the graveyard, along with, of course, reanimation and some big scary game-ending spells. Let's jump into the Scarab God, first talking about the creatures we're actually going to want to be reanimating. Starting things off, we got Gyruda, Doom of the Depths. I think this is just a great reanimation target, being 4 and 2 hybrid Dimir for a 6/6. When it enters the battlefield, each player puts the top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard, filling the grave in a reanimator deck, especially one like the Scarab God, who can target any graveyard, is very good. Then put a creature card with an even converted mana cost from among those cards into the battlefield under your control. Just a great reanimation piece, honestly. 6 for a 6/6 that's going to cheat another big body into play. Never bad, especially on a budget. Sir Conrad's another one we're going to definitely want to cheat out of grave, because it will win us games, being 3 and 2 black for a 5/4 that not only provides damage when a creature dies, but also when it's put into the graveyard from anywhere or when it leaves the graveyard. It also has 1 and a black to make each player mill a card, which, you know, is good if you have an infinite mana combo, because you can just dump all of it into that. But outside of that, this thing provides tons of damage to your opponent. Grave Titan is a very good one in this, because not only is it a 6-drop 6/6 death touch that provides 2 2/2s, being a total of 10 power and toughness for 6 mana, The 2 tokens that it spits out are zombies, which will feed into the Scarab God's ability. Speaking of zombies, we've got Grey Merchant of Asphodel, which is a fantastic reanimation target, being 3 and 2 black for a 2/4 that drains each opponent and makes you gain for your devotion to black, which in this deck has a tendency to be quite high, especially while we're also running cards like Massacre Worm, which is 3 and 3 black for a 6/5 that gives all of our opponent's creatures a -2/-2 on ETB, and whenever an opponent's creature dies, they lose 2. In Commander, stuff's gonna die. Even if your board wipe from the Massacre doesn't take out that many tokens, it just sitting in play and being a 6/5 and making people lose 2 for their stuff dying shuts off a lot of people's strategies. And finally, my favorite reanimation target, Sepulchral Primordial, being 5 and 2 black for a 5/4 Intimidate that rips a creature card out of each opponent's graveyard. Absolutely disgusting. This card will put easily 20 power on your board a lot of the time, way more often than you think. So with these cool targets to hit in our deck, we need some ways to fill up our grave. So for that, we've got Gossip's Talent being 1 and a blue. On level 1, provides a whenever a creature you control enters, surveil 1, which is extremely powerful in a reanimator deck, like honestly. For 1 and a blue, you can make it level 2, and whenever you attack, target attacking creature with base power 3 or less can't be blocked this turn. Not great. And for 3 and a blue, you can make it level 3. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may exile it, then return it to the battlefield under its control. Yeah, a blink for some of our big stuff like Grave Titan, Grey Merchant, Massacre Worm, Sepulchral, Garuda. Yeah, all of our targets want to be blinked when they hit. So level 1 and level 3, we're going to have to work our way for level 2. It's going to get a little awkward. That's okay. Very good in this deck for level 1 and level 3, though. Speaking of which, another card I came across that's probably going to go into my Tazri deck is the Grim Captain's Locker for 3 and a black, being a legendary artifact with tap, surveil 1, or tap until end of turn. Each creature card in your graveyard gains escape, 3 and a black, exile 4 other cards from your graveyard. Yeah, if you've got a big enough graveyard, you can just start cheating stuff into play for 3 and a black and exiling 4, which, again, Grave Titan, Garuda, Grey Merchant, Massacre. The deck also runs Stitcher Supplier, being 1 black for a 1/1 that mills you 3 cards when it ETBs or dies. Of course, we've got Buried Alive, 2 and a black, tutor up 3 creatures, put them in your grave. Too good to not put in. Ret Tome Mystic is a new one that was in the Aether Drift Precon, being a 1 and a blue, 2/1 with flying that gives each creature card in your hand 1 and a blue, cycling for 1 and a blue. Which, you know, if we happen to draw into any of our big targets that we want to reanimate, we can just ditch them to draw a card now and then reanimate them. Consider is kind of a weird one, but Surveil 1, you can get something in the grave with that. I wasn't sure where to put this. It's here. And then finally, Rona being a looter, which is a great way to put some cards that are in your hand that you want to reanimate into grave, while also doubling as a way to transform it into a huge 5/5 blocker that starts stealing stuff that it blocks. So now that we have all these big creatures in the graveyard, we need some actual ways to reanimate them outside of just the Scarab God. Charnel Serenade, or Charnel Serenade, I'm honestly not sure, is 4 and 2 black for a sorcery, with Surveil 3, then return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it, exile this card with 3 times counters on it, and it's also got Suspend for 2 and a black. So every 3 turns, this thing's going to come back in play, surveil you 3, and reanimate something. It looks like a 6-drop. In reality, it's a 3-drop that'll happen in 3 turns, and then 3 turns, and then 3 turns, and then 3 turns, which is really strong if you're playing some mid to high power casual commander, where the games go a little bit longer. Ever After is another great choice, being 4 and 2 black for a sorcery. Return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. Each of those creatures is a zombie in addition to its other type. Then you put Ever After on the bottom of your library, being 2 3-drop reanimates stapled to each other, which is a pretty good going rate. And it also returns them as zombies, which interacts with the Scarab God. Fantastic. Doomed Necromancer is a classic creature that can sacrifice itself to reanimate. Dread Return is a 4-drop reanimate that you can also flashback by sacking 3 creatures, which, you know, is another great way to get some more ETBs out of them. Victimize is a 3-drop that sacrifices a creature to return 2 creatures into play tapped, which, again, with all of our ETBs, very good. Persist is 1 and a black for a sorcery that returns a non-legendary creature from our graveyard with a -1/-1 counter on it. This doesn't hit 2 of our creatures. It doesn't hit Garuda and it doesn't hit Sir Conrad. But it hits the other ones, so it's in here. Living Death is in here as one of the win cons, as well as a reanimation package, because 3 and 2 black to return everything from grave back into play, and everything in play goes to grave, will benefit us most of the time far more than anyone else. And then, of course, we've got Animate Dead being 1 and a black, reanimate something, give it -1/-0. Outside of just the Sir Conrads and the cheating out the giant creatures and the reanimating other people's stuff with the Scarab God, we also run Army of the Damned to just create 13 tapped zombies, which should be enough to not only kill people with power, but also get enough scry off our commander that we can dig for any way to, for any of our big creatures or reanimation or anything we need. So here's a look at our ramp, our removal, our card draw, and our board interaction, as well as a look at the land package in the deck. Again, if you want to get a full look at any of these deck lists more in depth, links to all of them are down below. And with that, let's move on to deck number 4. Deck number 4 comes in at $49.31 and is based around the commander Prosper Tomebound. Prosper Tomebound is 2 a black and a red for a 1/4 Death Touch. At the beginning of your end step, exile the top card of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play that card. Whenever you play a card from exile, create a treasure token. And yes, this counts for lands you play from exile. This deck casts a ton of spells from exile, makes a ton of treasure tokens, and benefits you all along the way. Jumping into some of our other treasure creators, we've got Callan Reclusive Painter for black and a red for a 1/2. When Callan Reclusive Painter enters the battlefield, create a treasure token. Other creatures you control enter the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on them for each mana from a treasure spent to cast them. We've also got Hit the Motherlode for 4 and 3 red at sorcery speed to discover 10. If the discovered card's mana value is less than 10, create a number of tapped treasure tokens equal to the difference. And with all the treasure tokens this deck creates, the 7 mana to play Hit the Motherlode isn't unrealistic. Reign of Riches is 3 and 2 red for an enchantment that creates 2 treasure tokens on ETB, but also makes it so any spells we cast using treasure tokens have Cascade, which can be a win con in this deck. Decadent Dragon is a 4 for a 4/4 that creates treasure tokens on attack, but it also has Explore at instant speed to rip the top 2 off an opponent's deck and cast them as long as they're exiled. We've also got Magda Brazen Outlaw for 1 and a red for a 2/1. We don't really care about the dwarf text, but whenever a dwarf you control becomes tapped, you create a treasure token, so whenever Magda swings, we get a treasure. On top of all that, we can sacrifice 5 treasures to search our deck for a dragon card, so we can get that Decadent Dragon we talked about. Kinda cool. The deck also runs Big Score for 3 and a red at instant speed, as an additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card, draw 2 cards, and create 2 treasures. And of course, Academy Manufacturer for 3, being a 1/3, that makes it so whenever we create a clue, a food, or a treasure, we just make 1 of each instead. We also run a little package of cards that can cast from exile to get even more treasures with Prosper's ability. Party Thrasher gives all our non-creature spells we cast from exile Convoke, which in of itself, very good. But also at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, you may discard a card, look at the top 2, exile the top 2, and pick one of those and play it until end of turn. We also got Dream Devourer, which gives everything in our hand foretell, and its foretell cost is reduced by 2. And whenever we foretell a card, it gets +2/+0, which is a great way to get some bigger cards out cheaper. Wand of Wonder rips a sorcery or instant off the top of everyone's deck and lets you cast either 1, 2, or 3 depending on a dice roll. And the infamous Cruel Claw gives you a free spell off top whenever it deals combat damage, so very cool. These will all trigger Prosper to give us even more treasures. So with all these treasures in play, we're going to need some cards to deal some damage and get some benefits for it. So Unicult Anvil provides us with a 1/1 whenever an artifact we control dies once a turn, and also provides us with a semi-sack outlet for our artifacts to deal 1 to each opponent. Nadir's Nightblade drains our opponents for 1 and gains us 1 whenever a token we control dies. Pact Altair is a new Aether Drift card that we got that's really good, providing a drain to everybody whenever an artifact enters. Same with Ingenious Artillerist, except he does direct damage. We've also got cards like Gyroper Aether Grid, which can turn every 2 artifacts we control into 1 damage, which with all the treasures, very good. Along with Reckless Fireweaver to provide even more pings on treasure ETBs. Mayhem Devil straight up just deals 1 whenever anyone sacks something, so in here, disgusting. As well as Mirkwood Bats being disgusting, providing a drain on creation or sacrificing of a token. Very nuts. Of course, the deck runs Marionette Apprentice as well, being 1 and a black for a 1/2 with Fabricate, and whenever another creature or artifact you control goes to the graveyard, each opponent loses 1. As well as Marionette Master, being a 6-drop 1/3 with Fabricate 3 that does the same thing except equal to her power whenever an artifact dies. And finally, we've got the OG Disciple of the Vault, providing a drain whenever any artifact goes to the graveyard. So yeah, if anyone else is doing this stuff too, sorry. Past all the treasures coming out, all the cascades, the cast from exile, the drains from Marionette Masters, we also run Exsanguinate to dump all this treasure mana into to potentially bring home games. Here's a look at our mana ramp, our card draw, our removal, and our board interaction. And here's a look at the mana base. And with that, we'll move on to the 5th and final deck of the video. The 5th and final deck of this video comes in at $49.07 and is based around Kaikar Wind's Fury. Kaikar is 1 red, white, and a blue for a 3/3 flying. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying, sacrifice a spirit, add a red. This deck uses its removal and its card draw to get triggers off of Kaikar, along with a small cantrip package to create as many 1/1 white spirits as we can get, to either bash face with some really powerful synergies in the deck, or sacrifice the spirits to get far ahead of our opponents. Weirdly enough, a good place to start with this deck is the removal, so here's a look at our removal package. These are going to be a lot of the ways we get Kaikar triggers, along with this small cantrip package of Opt, Preordain, Consider, and Ponder. We're going to be using all these spells to trigger Kaikar, but not only Kaikar, but also a ton of other Spellslinger triggers. We've got Lorehold Apprentice in the deck, which is literally the most busted card in this deck, being a red and a white for a 2/2, but whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery, until end of turn, all of our spirits get the ability to tap and deal 1 to each opponent. Firebrand Archer delivers a ping whenever we play a non-creature spell. Balmor buffs our whole board and gives it trample whenever we play an instant or sorcery. Gutter Snipe delivers 2 damage whenever we play an instant or sorcery. Young Pyromancer gives us a 1/1 whenever we play an instant or sorcery. While bigger cards like Ovika Enigma Goliath comes in at 5, a blue and a red as a 6/6 with flying. Ward 3, pay 3 life. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create X 1/1 red Phyrexian Goblin creature tokens, where X is that spell's value. They gain haste until end of turn. Playing into the whole strategy, great. Of course, we've got the classic Talran Sky Summoner giving us 2/2 Drakes with flying whenever we cast an instant or sorcery, along with Murmuring Mystic doing the same thing except with 1/1 birds. Bloomburrow also gave us Coruscation Mage, which is 1 and a red that delivers a ping on non-creature spellcast, but also has Offspring, so it can deliver a 2 damage ping. We've also got the brand new Kaikar, which does the same thing as old Kaikar, except you could also decide to blink something if you wanted, which, yeah, that's pretty good in a couple case scenarios in this deck. Kessig Flamebreather is another great ping for non-creature spell card, along with Third Path Iconoclast being another great token producer. Jeskai Ascendancy delivers a board-wide buff whenever we play a non-creature spell, so if we play an instant during an opponent's turn, we can untap all of our spirits. No one's swinging at us. It also lets us loot whenever we play a non-creature spell if we want to, which, you know, never too bad. Of course, the deck runs Shark Typhoon, being a 6-drop enchantment that creates XX sharks equal to mana value of non-creature spells. You could also cycle it for X and make an XX shark if you're into that. Just a really powerful engine in the deck. Whirlwind of Thought is a really powerful draw engine, being an enchantment that gives us a draw every time we play a non-creature spell. Pretty nuts for 4 mana. And finally, for spell payoffs, we've got Monastery Mentor being a 2 and a white 2/2 with prowess that makes 1/1 white monks with prowess whenever you cast a non-creature spell. Which again can get really out of hand. So with us casting these spells, making these tokens, making even more tokens with all of these spell triggers, we also have a small package of creature ETB triggers like Molten Gatekeeper, Witty Roastmaster, and Impact Tremors, which all deliver pings on creature ETBs, so for all these spirits we're making, we're doing even more damage on top of what we've already talked about. Past this, the deck's win cons are Narset of the Ancient Ways emblem, because it gives you a permanent Gutter Snipe that no one can get rid of, so that'll probably bring home some games. Shared Animosity is also fantastic in this deck, being an enchantment that gives attacking creatures you control 1/0 for each other creature you control that has the same creature type, so with all of our spirits, that's a lot of damage. Mizzix's Mastery lets us return every instant and sorcery from our graveyard, which again, with all of these triggers, can definitely end a game. And finally, Gisela Blade of Gold Knight reduces all of our opponent's damage to half while doubling all of ours, and with all of the pings we've talked about, accelerates the game for us to crazy speeds. Here's a look at our mana ramp, our removal, our card draw, and our board interaction, along with the mana base of the deck. Again, if you want to look at any of these decks in full or are considering ordering any of them, check out the links down in the description and in the comments. And with that, that brings us to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed this video. You seem to enjoy these style of videos. I really enjoy making them, and these were 5 decks that just really flowed out of me, honestly. I had a lot of fun making all 5 of these. They all seemed super powerful. It wasn't difficult at all to create powerful decks under 50 that I think you guys are very much going to enjoy playing. So with that, if you guys want to order any of the cards that I talked about today, consider using my TCGPlayer affiliate link. It's down in the comments in the description. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to show additional support and you stuck around for the whole video, you might be one of those people. It starts as low as $1 to really support the channel over on Patreon, and you also get a direct hand in recommending some obscure cards for our weekly obscure card list. I'm going to stop talking and get out of your guys' hair. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys next time.